at the heart of the Christian faith is this beautiful paradox that God is simultaneously way, way, way beyond us and beyond our comprehension, and yet also closer to us than our own deepest selves. That God is more intimately aware of us and closer to us maybe than even our own breath, even while at the same time God is before all and after all, cosmically, infinitely large, both at the same time. We get a glimpse of that in Acts chapter 17, in the passage we took a look at this last Thursday when we gathered for our series going through the book of Acts. We found ourselves with Paul the Apostle. He's been going from town to town, sometimes visiting churches that he had started, congregations he had first visited and started in his first journey. Now he's going to visit them and also to new places. So there he is in Athens, this cultural, intellectual, philosophical capital in the ancient Roman Empire. And he's there in this big plaza called the Areopagus, sometimes called Mars Hill. You can hear the names of the Greek god Ares and the Roman god Mars in either of those two names. So anyway, here he is, this place that is decked out with all these statues and idols to other gods of the Greek pantheon and the Roman pantheon, probably plenty of others. This is also the place where local philosophers come and give their lectures and toss out their ideas. They banter about and have, Socratic dialogues or whatever. So Paul's gone there, and at first he's been really troubled by all of these different statues to different gods, Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, take your pick. And for someone who's grown out of Judaism, which is really, really clear, there's one God, you don't worship any other gods, this is really uncomfortable. And yet he's also trying to meet these people where they are. So he finds this point of continuity. He says, as I was walking along the way here in this big plaza, I see all these statues to all these gods, and I found one that was inscribed to an unknown God. And Paul goes, that's my in, right? This is how I'll try and make the connection. He says, what you all have been worshiping as unknown, I've come to tell you about this God, the unknown God. And he then makes a really interesting move. Instead of saying he's come to talk about one God with one particular set of attributes, right? Like Zeus is the god of thunder, and Mercury is the messenger god, and Poseidon is the god of the sea. Paul just goes, the unknown God is the one who's made everything, the creator of all things, who's made all human beings out of the same one common ancestor. We all are one human family. This was a beautiful but scandalous claim, right? In a time when everybody sort of viewed each little nation, each little tribe had their own gods and their own origin story. For Paul to say, we have a common story, and that all of us, for whatever our backgrounds, whatever our ethnicity, culture, any of those things, we are really part of one human family. And I've come to tell you about the God who made us all, who is gathering us all back together. And then he says, this God isn't far from any of us. And then Paul does something beautifully. He starts quoting some of the ancient Greek poets. We think it's snippets of a Cretan poet named Epimenides. He says, as even some of your own poets say, in God we live and move and have our own being, and we are the offspring of God. Now, in the original poet's context, he's been writing about Zeus, the head chief Greek god. Paul has no problem borrowing some of those quotes and saying, you thought it was Zeus, the god on Mount Olympus. I've come to tell you, the God who made all things. We really are all connected. This God has intended, has willed for us to all be in relationship with God and with each other. Because after all, this God who created all things is also not far from any of us. It's been God's desire, God's design that all of us should seek and find this God. And then Paul moves on to say, this God has promised to put all things right, that one day all the world will be put right, will be judged, and justice will be brought through one man who's been raised from the dead. Now, some folks listening say, this is a bridge too far for me. Someone raised from the dead? Nope, that sounds crazy. Others who would say, he sounds like he's talking about other gods. I'm not interested. A handful of people, though, say, I want to hear more. A couple of them come to be believers in Jesus. A guy named Dionysus, who lives there in the Areopagus, and a woman named Damaris are named in particular. We don't get huge, big crowds or thousands of people named, but we do get a few. And then Paul goes on his journey to a next city, Corinth, another cosmopolitan, bustling capital of commerce in the modern-day Greece area. And there, once again, he finds a place to begin. And even when he's met with rejection, Paul simply says, I'm going to shake the dust off my feet and keep on moving. Right? This is the most confrontational that early Christians get. He doesn't grab weapons and say, if you don't believe in my Jesus, I'm going to kill you. He doesn't insist on using force. He says, I'm going to present this offer to you. I'm going to tell you the story of Jesus. And if you reject it, I'm not going to get mad at you. I'm not going to seek revenge or force you. I'm going to go merrily on my way, following the very pattern of Jesus, so that even when Christians are rejected, they become witnesses to Jesus. Even when people say, no, thank you, we're not interested, we have the opportunity to point to the kind of love Jesus has shown to us, right? Because at the heart of the Christian story is a God who risks being rejected, a God who takes all the rejection we can lob at God there by putting Jesus on the cross, and whose love still endures anyway. If that's the message we share, then the way we present that message has to have that same kind of vulnerability, so that we can say to people, the God who made the universe is infinitely big and also close up and is near to every one of us. And that God is willing to bear rejection. That's what happens at the cross. And yet God's love still persists. From that experience that Paul met with rejection but found enough people to continue to nurture a community, Paul ends up staying in that city for 1.5 years because God still has work for him to do there. It's a beautiful story of Paul using what he's got, meeting people where they're at, and God bringing unlikely success or unlikely growth, even when it looked like he'd met first with only defeat. We're going to continue this story on Thursday as we go further through the book of Acts. We hope you'll join us as we continue to study this story of how Jesus' followers radiated out into the world to bring the good news of God's love in Jesus to everyone. Join us on Thursdays at 1 o'clock here at the church at Community of Christ, or you can catch up with these video summaries along the way. See you then.